Hello. Let's do this one.
Hello, does my audio work?
Yes, it does.
Hi.
We can hear you.
See you.
We can barely see ourselves. It's really, really small. So.
My view is reasonably large. So
Full screen, everybody.
this was not to be interpreted in a way you did.
Thank you, Carsten.
Sorry.
We have been working on the whiteboard. So we're just thinking that we can just zoom in and let you see. Wrong direction.
Oh, that's really bad compression artifacts.
It's gonna get better.
Yeah, when you zoom in, it gets better.
Barely see, but why can I not do this bigger? I mean, oh, this is gonna make it minimize. Yeah. Close here.
So if I knew where the chat window is today, it's gone in my...
The chat?
The chat is gone.
Should get something.
Ah, there it is. So this is the Etherpad we're using today. And we haven't really bashed the agenda yet. So maybe we'll spend some time discussing the output of your workshop.
Yep.
How much time do you think we should use for that?
As much as we have, I guess.
As much as we have.
So
Okay.
maybe it's not a good idea to start with that. Maybe you can take the rest of the items and then.
But some of us have to leave in 1 hour, right? So we have
Christian,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, but also for me it would be helpful if we could have that part.
Okay, Ivailo, can you say something about the CoreConf status?
Yeah, I think it could be a good thing.
Okay, so let's do this before we enter the big thing. Is this like 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think 5 minutes should be enough.
Okay. I think we're not going to do PubSub then.
Do we have PubSub authors online apart from? Are you officially or not?
I'm not yet an author. No.
Okay. We don't have PubSub authors then.
But, the one sentence status update is we still need to put the PubSub proposal into the actual draft.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, anything else we want to add to the agenda? Okay, I hope everybody is seeing the Etherpad I'm typing into. Do I share that?
Well, we can see it.
Okay. Good. So let's do a quick document status. right now we have one document in the RFC editor queue, and it looks like it will stay there for a while because the RFC editor queue is pretty full at the moment. We have SendML Edge, which I think is waiting for the authors. Actually, Ari told me that he won't be able to make it today, so I probably should add him here in the list of apologies. So here we are waiting for the authors. Hop limit has been quite active, and there is a -07 upcoming with all the good ISG input, and maybe we can do a quick run through that after the document status. SendML more units is entering IETF last call now. So Alexei was very quick in his AD evaluation. The resource directory is still in AD evaluation. For echo request tag, we are waiting for a new version that addresses Francesca's review comments. And for stateless, I think -02 with that is addressing the WGLC comments is upcoming. So that finishes my part of the document status. Any other document we want to talk about? Okay. So let's go to the hop limit document. We already discussed that we are comfortable with making the requirement to implement hop limit into a must. The current text says a must for new implementations. I'm not sure that that's actually actionable, but I think it does express the intent here. So I probably should be pasting in the link to the 07 version. Mohammed has his own repository somewhere. Yeah, so there was one point, Klaus, you have a CC on that, where the current text doesn't really explain how implementations that do not implement hop limit handle the cache versus implementations that do implement hop limit handle the cache. I mean, it says how, but it doesn't say why. So maybe we want to add some text there, but apart from that, I think we are in pretty good shape. And here's a pointer to the GitHub repository that Matt uses for doing the work. He doesn't do this exactly the way we usually use GitHub, but still there is a candidate -07 there, and maybe it's good if people who are interested in the hop limit thing have a look there. So that's my current status. I don't know who has followed the various ISG comments. I think there have been some pretty good editorial comments, and the usual comments we get when people aren't part of the core ecosystem and don't know how to read the tables with the C and U and R bits and things like that. Anything else on hop limit? So if there's anything we should push back on, we need to know this pretty quickly, because tomorrow is going to be the telechat, and it might get improved there as it is. Okay, so with that, let's go on to the CallConf status. Viral, can you say a few words?
So yes, we uploaded new version of the COMI draft, which addresses some of the, I think, all of the review comments that we had for that draft. So the most notable changes are the examples. They were having a plus sign, which was confusing for readers. So now we removed the plus signs, and I believe this should make it more obvious to follow. And another maybe more important change is that before we were always referring as /c as the resource that needs to be used. Now this is something that it's more clear that it could be changed, but by default it is /c. So for me, those are the most important changes, and I think they address all the comments that we had for the draft. And otherwise, there are a few editorial changes as well. And for the rest of the drafts, I think they were already revised around the end of the last IETF. I think that they are also all the review comments are addressed. So yes, I am not aware of any additional changes that are requested for the CallConf draft.
Okay, so this means we should be going into working plus call with a set.
Yes, I think it's the logical next thing to do.
Any other opinions on this? Okay. So I think the chairs will have one last look, but we should be able to issue the working plus call soon, and should even be able to have a result in time for the internet draft deadline on November 4th.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, let's go on to the results of your workshop.
Yes. Can you see our whiteboard? Is that readable? Okay. We also have slides. Maybe we should start with those.
Yeah.
Is it this one? Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we have been discussing for the whole day since 9 this morning. It's me, Klaus, Ricard, Marco, and Christian. There are some minutes in the Etherpad here. Yeah, you cannot click the link, but Yeah, we have been drawing on the whiteboard mostly, so we have, yeah, we try to summarize the discussion. So we talked about 2 documents.
Can you quickly show the URL again?
Or
Your previous slide.
previous slide.
The title slide.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It notes IETF workshop 16/10/19. I don't know why Cora is not in there, but yeah. Okay, so the first thing we discussed was the multicast for notifications. So this started, if you remember, with a hallway discussion about PubSub and how to get multicast for notification working. There were several proposals, and one of these was to get multicast working for responses. And this is the draft that Marco has brought to core, which is draft Tiloka core.
Observe notifications multicast. Observe multicast notifications.
Yeah. So just we have gone through it and we have clarified what. So if you remember, that draft suggested to reserve ranges of tokens for these specific applications. And when we presented that at the IETF, we got some very skeptical faces, particularly from Klaus and Karsten. And so we had this this workshop to make sure that, okay, can we not do it in another way / better? And I think we figured out a better way to do it. And this picture or the whiteboard is supposed to explain that. So let's go through it. Can you see my mouse pointer?
Yes.
Great.
Should we just show it on the whiteboard with our physical hands?
If you want to do that, and it's fun. I mean, I
We
can
haven't
barely
talked about
see
before
what.
this, who actually wants to go through the thing and explain.
So I can give it a try, and then whatever you, I give it the pedagogical way, and if you want to give it the theoretical way, which is nice, but yeah, you can explain it in different ways, I think, right? Just
Yeah.
to make you understand what the message flow is. So
And in the end, we actually didn't change that much, but mostly we clarified how we described the whole thing.
yes,
And that made the biggest advance.
yeah. So the biggest thing, or the first thing we did, so you have these boxes up here. The top box is the server, and the bottom box is the client. So you can see that there is only one endpoint in the server, the smaller box, this one. But the client actually has 2 different endpoints. So the co-op endpoints are different because one of them uses the unicast IP and the other one uses the multicast IP. Multicast IP is, yeah, the multicast address that the client is listening on for multicast notification. So how does it work? The client first sends a request to the server, and this request is to indicate that it intends to observe a certain resource. Then the server responds to this request saying, yes, okay, but you actually need to listen to this IP address and also sending other information like, okay, here it is, the token that you will need to match these responses, and possibly other thing like group of score information. The client then uses this information, that is 5, in its other endpoint, which is the multicast one, where it will listen to responses that match the request that the server sent to him in 4. So basically, the server is telling the client, I am going to respond as if you sent me this request. And the request is this little box here. And the client is not actually sending this request. So this is what do we call it? Either fake or virtual request that the client is not sending. And the server is actually responding to this request using the token, phantom request. Thank you. I like that. Michael just suggested phantom request. Token, multicast IP address, everything. And any other notification will be received on this matching this phantom request. So yeah, does it make sense? We need to clarify.
Which number is phantom request?
Phantom request is number 1.
Okay.
So the point is that, assuming that this is not the first client that wants to do this observation, that wants to do this multicast, wants to do this observe over multicast, then the server has already a multicast IP address set up. It has already like multicasting notification to other clients. And it's basically just telling the client, you need to listen as if you sent me this request.
So who owns the token namespace?
Technically, the owner is the multicast IP address.
Right.
But since there is no single entity behind that, we delegate this task to the server. And actually, it turns out that we don't need to reserve any token spaces or anything like that, because when a response is received by the client at this multicast IP endpoint, then in this scope of client endpoint and server endpoint, the server chosen token can be chosen by the server without any ambiguity.
So just to...
It might help in understanding this, that the phantom request was a unicast message. So whenever the message comes back, it only needs to be matched against the tokens from the tokens with that particular IP address as a server.
Yeah.
During the discussion, we also realized that the reserving or whatever the token value ranges wasn't needed in the first approach either. But while in the first approach we were using co-op options to give information back to the client, now we are essentially using the payload of that message for. So no need for new co-op options anymore either.
Yeah, we can go into details of that. I have next slide will say that. But basically, just to recap, why did we have token ranges before? We had token ranges because we did not do this distinction between the co-op client co-op endpoints, and we thought that the situation we were worried about was, okay, what if a client has used this token to send a unicast request to the server, and it's waiting for a response on that token, and then suddenly the same server is telling the same client that you should listen for this same token. So the client would would be waiting on two responses with the same token and wouldn't be able to differentiate between them. But now with the discussion with Klaus, and we realized that that is not possible because the co-op endpoint is also identified not only by it's identified by its IP address and port, and the other definition. No, that's it. So IP address and port. So if it's using a unicast IP address, the endpoint is going to be different if it's using a multicast IP address.
Yeah, I think we in earlier discussions we may have been confused because for requests to a multicast address, we need to relax the matching rules so that the response that comes from a unicast address matches the request that went to a multicast address. But in this direction, we don't have to relax anything. So I agree that this should generally work.
Yeah. That part about token ranges is removed.
Yeah. Options are removed.
So let's talk about if this sounds clear, then we can talk about what still needs to be defined, which is the more interesting part.
I have one more question on this picture.
Yeah.
Of course, the whole thing only makes sense if you have more than one client. So how does message number 5 get to those other clients?
So this message number 5 is inside this one client.
Yes.
Another client is wanting to listening. It's gonna do the same thing. So it's gonna request. It's gonna do the same request to the server. It's gonna get this message 4 that will contain this same information.
Phantom request, more or less.
The phantom request, yeah. And then the client itself will have to do the exact same thing. So this phantom request information, however that's formatted, will be sent by the server to the client. For every client that wants to observe this multicast, resource. I don't know how to call it, multicast resource. I'm not.
Okay, so if you have a large group of clients that want to listen to these notifications, then maybe you don't want to imply the server into each client join, but maybe you can model this as a proxy thing. I haven't thought about this.
Yes. Next slide.
Christian was also Christian was also suggesting that this request 3 and 4 may not be done at the same to the same server that contains or that has the observable resource. This might be another server, another endpoint. Yeah.
We were also discussing if 3 is even an get observed.
Yeah, so let's move to this.
Oh, okay, you have that.
Yeah, that in this slide. So we have several details that are not defined, and we would like your opinion, if you have ideas, anything. The first one is about request 3. So this is the way that the client tells the server, hey, I want to observe this resource. How does it say that? It could be a get to a separate resource, which can be well-known / the resource to observe. It could be observe to that exact resource. So there are different ways. And the response, the same way, could be either 205, and the content of the response can be, like the payload of the co-op response can be, this is the request that I'm going to match to. This is the phantom request. Or if you're using observe directly to the resource, it could be an error response saying, hey, this is not going to end up in an observation, but here is the information for you to actually observe via multicast.
Yeah, a related question is when does the server know that the last client is gone? That's the usual problem in multicast solutions.
Yes, but then again, it could do what it usually does. What is usually done in observations to just send a con back. And yes, we're ruling that out in 7252. And again, we are ruling out multicast responses also. Yes.
So the server should occasionally send a confirmable response. See if anyone's out there.
Confirmable response.
I don't think that makes any sense, so I didn't understand what the con was about.
The multicast notifications would be non-confirmable.
Right, that's what I thought. So how do you find out if there are any clients left?
It's hard to hear you, Michael.
Well, you need to do the power brick thing again.
So there's there would be also another option, that is to just let the notifications expire, in the sense of not sending something for longer than the max age, and then waiting whether someone is asking for the observation data again. But that's just a knee-jerk reaction.
And in a completely different direction, one thought we had was, what if the server actually starts sending the multicast notifications before it even has heard from the first client? It just sits there, and whenever it wants to send some notification, it does it. And then you can, independently from that, spread the information how to listen to those notifications. And then clients can start doing that, and they can stop doing that, and the server is completely unaware.
This was about, the bullet number 3 was about that, which is, if the server configured before to this is what you were describing, configured before to send this notification to this multicast address and just shares that information to the clients that wants to observe that resource, or can decide to start sending notifications on multicast when it realizes, okay, I have a certain number of clients all listening to this observation. Should I then switch to multicast? There are different ways, and they're not exclusive. They could be. They're options. Like, I personally think that they both make a lot of sense, and they should be described, and I don't see a problem with them coexisting. This is something like, whoever deploys this would have to decide how do I make this work? Does the server always send a multicast, or does it start sending a multicast if it has too many clients? Can I support that? And I saw something from Michael, but...
Hi. Is this better? Is that noise? No?
I think if you talk loudly, it can work.
Yeah, I'm in some more public room, so I'm kind of trying to keep my voice down, but I unplugged the power supply to use battery speed. So I guess one thing I wanted to ask before, I was trying to read some of the documents before this goes too far. Does someone have a real practical use for this today? And the reason I ask is because a lot of LLMs, support multicast with great difficulty, and so it may not be a big win to use multicast anyway. And so while I think this is pretty cool, I think that it would be better if it was well motivated with a brick and mortar use case that really demanded it, rather than just this cool, we could do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the use case that has always been named for actually using multicast, not just the group communication use case, but the multicast use case, has been switching lights, so you can have them all switch on and off at the same time. Of course, that only works if no packets are lost and so on. So here the lights would be the clients, and they subscribe to a multicast from a light switch or from a controller, and the controller can send out multicasts to do the light switch, and then of course you have to do all the multicast things like saturation and so on to make sure that things actually arrive.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially message 3 is for the light bulb to find out what is the multicast address and the token that has the right information for this light switch. And of course, this could also be configured. It wouldn't have to be a request, but it also could be a request.
Yep, I think we have a draft on that, Carsten.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the first bullet. What request? Or what if request? And the second bullet is what response? Because that's about 4. How do you get this information, and what information exactly? Because here we started thinking, okay, what is this? It's not only the token, it's request 1, including the token. It might be the multicast IP address. That was something that in the previous version of the draft we moved out. So it was there in the beginning, and we moved it out because we thought, okay, this is negotiation. Multicast IP address seems too complicated, but in this case, maybe I think it makes sense to put it in. Yeah, it's, for example, request 1 includes, for example, the request URI or the options in the request. And then for security, it would be necessary to have the OSCORE, if OSCORE is used, group OSCORE external AAD. So this is the AAD that is external AAD that is used in the response in all the notifications that are linked to the registration request. And since that is not sent, the server is telling, okay, I'm gonna link all the notifications to that. So right now we see this information. How that is formatted exactly, we don't really know.
First, we were thinking of literally putting the core wire format inside the payload of response 4.
Which is what's happening.
And then we were thinking maybe not, and doing something nice based on CBOR instead. And then we were thinking, but what if request 1 is actually protected by OSCORE, and then taking out the information would break the OSCORE protection of that information. So then we were back at maybe literally transferring the OSCORE protected request 1 inside this payload of number 4.
Has to be a group OSCORE protected request in case, right? And that would mean having the LEAD part already embedded in the message right away, like the token.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But maybe we want to have some additional metadata. So we are back at having some kind of CBOR-based format. where
Wait,
the
inside.
Okay.
The multicast IP, for instance, would have to be.
Yeah, that is
out.
not part of the,
So you want a kind of CBOR array with first element of metadata, then the message,
Of course.
for instance.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of metadata?
The multicast IP address.
Okay, so everything but the message. If we model the phantom message to be an actual group OSCORE message, probably the only metadata is the multicast IP address.
For now, yes.
For now, yeah. Yeah.
But what about so if you think about OSCORE, group OSCORE, there is a sender ID of 1
Server.
of the phantom request.
Yeah, but like it's like
the
the
sender,
group sender,
yeah.
but you need to have the sender ID of the server.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need the sequence number of the server that is used once and for all and consumed. And that would be also the partial IV in that phantom request.
Yeah.
So if you have an actual phantom request as a group OSCORE request, you have
all the information,
there. Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if you're not interested in group OSCORE at all, so those group multicast notifications would be insecured. Well, so far so good. It's not a group OSCORE phantom request. It's just a co-op phantom request, and well, just take it as is again. So I think
I'm sure we should be defining the insecure.
You'd like to mandate group OSCORE usage no matter what?
I have no other idea how to secure multicast.
Oh, me neither, but you may just want to have no security for some reason. Also, the initial proposal had two parts separated, like without security first, and then we added security for the cases when you wanted it.
I mean, that would be the same, right? You could define it without considering OSCORE. You could define it how you do it, and then if OSCORE is used, it's really simple. Instead of having you send the co-op message, you send the OSCORE protected co-op message. It's like,
Yeah. So why provide the complicated insecure version when we already have a simple secure
no,
version?
it's not complicated. It's exactly the same. It's just in one case you send co-op, and in the other case you send co-op that includes OSCORE. Like OSCORE protected co-op.
Karsten, as an analogy, in 7390 and the BIS we are building, we are describing both the insecure case as a starting point that we don't really recommend to go for unless you really know what you're doing, and then how to make it secure with group OSCORE. So I suppose we can think the same way here.
I mean, it's basically not even different. It's the exact same thing. It's just that the co-op message contains the OSCORE option, so it's an OSCORE.
And
But-
always keep in mind that the NO in NoSec is the acronym for secured at a lower layer.
Yes.
I'm wondering, is co-op over IPsec still a thing?
That would be co-op NoSec mode. It's in the RC.
So at least there's Daniel Legal continues to think that IPsec is useful in LLM, and I wish that were true. In which case you'd want that mode.
As a placeholder, we can really think of the multicast IP address followed by the phantom request that is as an array, as array elements.
I would use a CBOR map. We have the future option of extending stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would like to do what Christian suggested, which is for format of 3 to just send observe to the resource to observe, and then the server would send back an error with that payload, with the CBOR array and all the information.
So an observe to the actual resource to observe.
Yeah. It would be like it would be
an error, but I'm offering you something better, and I explain you the payload.
Yeah.
Basically, how we are suggesting doing redirects to application to turn back an error message with a payload that indicates what the application should do instead.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of rationale was at the very beginning of the previous version.
Yeah.
And we discarded it because, no, this is confusing, telling you no, but it's a yes.
Yeah, no, you cannot, no, you're not having a, but what we didn't realize is that it is a no for this co-op endpoint. This co-op endpoint is not doing observations. But if this client supports this specification, then this client will know to start or to how to have this second co-op endpoint do the observation.
So there's no observe option in response 4. Okay.
There's no observe.
Okay.
Yep, that sounds good to me. The only difficult question here is which response code are we going to use?
Yeah, good.
Let's not have that discussion now because there's not enough time in all the next interims.
Bad request. Not yours, the client.
Yeah, we will have to decide that in Singapore over some beer, I think.
Okay. Next.
Let me just mention that doing it this way, it gives a natural solution for the proxy thing.
Yeah.
Because you can cache this error response.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing is we were wondering how to get multicast through a proxy in this number 2 notification. I think the conclusion was that you wouldn't. This is optimization of between 2 hops, and if there's a proxy between the client and the server, then you could do these multicast notifications on each hop from the client to the proxy and from the proxy to the server, but we wouldn't try to define any kind of end-to-end multicast through proxies.
Yeah, sounds good.
Maybe one more thought here for the connection to another document that has been around in this context, that is the non-traditional responses. So if you're aware of what that document does, or just to summarize briefly, that document says that we could put the request message in full into an option. And if we just replace that with, and by the way, for the request message, see there, then you could use the same things that we put in message 4 over there just again and have basically the same situation. So this is a response to what has been defined over there. If you're really interested, you can look it up, just to link those two things because they are very similar in some aspects.
Yep.
Okay, next. Yeah, so the next question that Klaus brought up was, does this work with the proposal for PubSub, which will be in the next version of PubSub, if I understand correct? So the answer is yes. How did we get there? So this the figure on the right here is PubSub with a distinction between configuration server and content broker. So there is the collection of the topic configuration, then configuration, and then the content, which can be on another node. And there are different ways, Klaus was saying, there are different ways of distributing the notifications. The current way that is described in the current document is the one with notification as responses, which is the one that we were considering for our multicast notification. And then other ways of doing that would be using co-op put or MQTT publish. And so these right now are not defined, but they will be. And when we looked at this picture and we looked at to realize, does this match with our multicast notification? And the answer is yes. You could still have a subscriber that has a unicast IP address. It would reach for the configuration. There is something that needs to be defined there about how you do the discovery of where the topic is, what is the configuration, what are the different ways that you could actually receive the notification. But the point is that assuming that the topic supports the notification, multicast notification, then you can get the same response as number 4 over here. And then from this multicast IP endpoint, you can do the same thing. You can listen to the responses on the multicast IP that was told to you in the response 4. So the point is that it works, or it will work with the PubSub when the PubSub is updated. We don't see any problem with that.
Yep. And then we would have to figure out a similar way to the previous slide. How do we get this information to the subscriber?
Yeah.
And since we are thinking about these different ways of getting notifications to subscribers, like over MQTT and so on, there must be something defined in the PubSub proposal where you can get, and here's how you get your notifications over MQTT. Here's how you get your notifications over multicast.
Yeah.
Here's how you can supply a callback URI there where the broker can put to, for example. And so
yeah,
all of these options could be offered by one PubSub broker or just one of them.
So what I was telling Klaus is that, and I would like to bring this up as a personal point of view, is that this is gonna expand PubSub quite a lot. And I personally would suggest that the whole part about configuration and topic configuration will be a separate document. Because what is right now in PubSub is basically this part, the part about the content broker and the subscriber, and only the part about responses as notifications. And it would be very simple to add notifications as requests and MQTT publish, and they could even like be underspecified and say like this can be done and someone else will do it. And then have a separate document for the configuration with all the API or interfaces that need to be defined. How do you get the configuration? How are these formatted and everything? So my suggestion was that one. Then it's up to you and to the working group to decide what's the best way. I definitely see that this goes all together, but yeah. And also, of course, that however we format this message we need to make sure that it fits with the interface on the configuration, topic configuration in that document when that will be specified.
The hope would be that we don't have to define two completely different formats here. We just use the same format, and one is a subset of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we should avoid the feature creep in the PubSub proposal and modularize it in some way with extension points, so we can extend it over time.
And I think that we should show this beautiful, where is it? Beautiful figure that Klaus drew. I don't know if you can see the whiteboard.
I don't know if you can see the screen share and the video camera at the same time in WebEx.
Ah.
Maybe someone can confirm.
You can. You just have to open up the right tab.
You can click the video. Oh, you can't. What happened with that?
When you're talking, I see your screen, and when Francesca's talking, you can see her screen if you do the right thing.
Yeah, so you probably have to unshare the PowerPoint to see the screen, to see the whiteboard.
Okay. Let's see. Stop sharing. Should I pause? No, stop sharing.
Yes.
Can you read anything?
Or? Blood.
It's not really intended to be read, but I can try to tell a bit about it. We have talked over the time, in particular in Montreal, a lot about different components. We have resource directory, and we have PubSub broker, and so on. And one hope was, or one observation was, that these are all structurally very similar in some way. Most are building on some kind of collection resource pattern. And so we have all these different bits of small components, small pieces of components in core. And the hope would be that we could define them all in some kind of loose, decoupled way, and then simply arrange them and combine them into these applications like resource directory and PubSub broker and so on. And for example, collection resources is this pattern on which DataHub is based, and DataHub is much more than that. And then we have in PubSub broker the collection resource of configurations, and in resource directory of collection resource of resource descriptions. And so we could actually use DataHub to upload those configurations as an interface, or those resource descriptions, without defining anything specific to PubSub broker and resource directory. But then we would need to define, for example, a resource discovery interface in addition to DataHub, so that clients can actually look up resources that they are looking for. And when we create topics, then publishers and subscribers need some kind of topic discovery interface. And then Francesca pointed out that aren't those two interfaces not really the same thing, because topics are just resources. And then we have these other parts like notifications via unicast, notifications via multicast, notifications via post callback, and so on. And that is not really specific, of notifications via MQTT. And that is not really specific to PubSub broker. It could be simply used by some device to deliver telemetry to the other devices or to the cloud also. We have lots of reusable parts here, I think, and Francesca is taking photos of me. And the hope is that we can move those parts independently forward so they don't block each other, while at the same time getting synergies from aligning them with each other, so that you don't have to do the whole thing again if you need the same thing in a different application.
Yeah. And Christian left, yeah. Yeah, I think that was cool.
That was the first draft now.
Yeah, and before we move to the next, I actually wanted to bring up that since we have been working on PubSub, and since we have the one of the ACE chairs in the meeting, hi Jim, I think it will be time to adopt the PubSub profile, because I think we need to work on PubSub security at the same time as we work on PubSub.
That's not unreasonable.
Okay, so I was hoping we could do an adoption call before IETF 106, and I mean, even now I talk to people who were here and they are all supporting, and I'm asking maybe like, okay, we're not that many today, but please, if you think it's important, go to ACE mailing list and voice so in the mailing list.
Mark was trying to hide a bit.
I was looking for my son.
Yeah, I guess that will come in the mailing list, right, Jim?
Is Ericsson planning to do an implementation?
Not that I'm aware, but I mean, implementation of PubSub security.
Yes.
I cannot commit to that.
Okay, that's fine.
But yeah, we'll see. I would have to ask around. That's a possibility, but can say yes.
So from the core side, or on my side, I can say that we probably need time until IETF 106 to put our proposal into a proper draft.
Mm-hmm.
But once that is done, at least I will loudly demand security for PubSub, which includes getting the payload securely from the publishers to the subscribers, securing the communication between the publishers and brokers and subscribers, and getting access control for the topic resources. If something is ready by then already, I would be very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I will increase the pressure after IETF 106 probably to get that into place.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's my draft, and it's answered these points.
Well, I mean, part of me is basically been, no, unless I see advancement on PubSub, I'm not really all that interested in trying to advance PubSub security. So.
Yeah. But hopefully now we will see advancement in PubSub. So, yeah. Okay. I just want to bring that up and ask for that.
And by the way, since PubSub is already a core working group document, we cannot really make a dependency on Francesca's draft until it has some kind of status to move PubSub forward. So please do this before IETF 106. .
I mean, my draft is the only one that I'm aware of that has some type of proposal for securing PubSub. And even MQTT people, when I talked to them, they were really happy and they were looking forward to kind of synchronize to adopt the same way to secure PubSub in MQTT. So just like, this is a proposal for security. It doesn't have to be exactly that one. We can work on it. But yeah, I think we should work on it. Okay, so let me share my screen again, and we can move on with the slides. So this is about the other document we talked about today, which is the Grupo Score resource discovery. And this figure is just a recap of what this is. So this is not my draft, but I can go through the slides since I'm already doing that. So we have, right now, we have ACE for getting a client to get authorization to join a group and getting the keys from a group manager. And then we have in core the OSCORE GroupCom document to describe how to secure, well, both how to do group communication and how to secure group communication with OSCORE. And what this draft is doing is that it's providing a way for the client to find out where it can do the joining process. So to find out the group manager and the resource at the group manager that it needs to talk to. So this would be step 0, and then the client would have the group manager address and joint resource address, and it would try to get, probably either it knows what authorization server to talk to, or it would talk to the group manager, get back an error saying, hey, you need to talk to the authorization server. And then step 1, talks to authorization server. Step 2, get the keys from the group manager and post the token before it gets the keys. And then finally, it can run Grupo Score, or it's part of the group. Quick recap. Was this clear enough? Well, then I have an example too, or Marco has an example to go through.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
This is taken from the draft. It's one of the short examples. It's in 2 steps. The joining node knows only one thing, the name of the application group. So it has to find out the name of the security group used to identify the OSCORE group, the link to the join resource at the group manager, and the multicast IP address used to communicate in the group. In order to do that, mostly because of the way the resource directory works, requires to perform 2 queries. This is the first one, and this is actually new content brought up by this document. So through this query, the joining node gets in the payload of the response, in fact, the link to the join resource of the group manager, framed in red, the name of that security group, the name of the application group again, plus a number of things we define in the latest version of the draft, actually, a number of parameters describing earning time, the algorithms and related parameters used in the OSCORE group. That's something that the joining node will end up knowing from the group manager eventually anyway, but knowing that so in advance makes it possible to avoid a trial and error process with the group manager, or an explicitly asking to the group manager upon access token posting like we describe in the ACE joining draft. Also, in case in this response the joining node gets indication of algorithms used in the Oscar group that the joining node doesn't support at all, it can just give up here and not continue with trying to get an access token or whatever. So it's a hint, but it spares possible later pain to the joining node. Next slide. And this is the second query. It's something that we added in the examples of the draft for the sake of completeness, but this is a pattern taken from the resource directory document as is. You need to perform this second query, and this time it is an endpoint lookup technically, where you indicate as an endpoint type a resource directory group, indicating as endpoint the name of the application group again. And the point of all this is that in the response you have indicated in base the multicast IP address using the group. So after this, you're done with the resource directory, and the flow continues with going to the authorization server if you know it already, or well, to the group manager to get the unauthorized response pointing you at the authorization server. But there are more examples in the draft, and there's a very long section with a real-world example that BACnet provided us. That was it. So
Yeah.
I don't remember what was the next slide. But...
No, next slide is open point.
All right.
So if this is clear, then we were discussing, the first point was that there is no register for link target attributes. Should we have one? Kind of a very open, hard question.
So you are asking, should there be a register for link target attribute names? We have two registries for target attributes, RT and IF. And you could always define another registry for a specific attribute.
Yeah. But there is no...
It's about the registry which contains the things like RT and so on.
Yeah.
So the new version, what's it called, 828H, forget the number, actually allows us to do that. So we could.
The new version of?
The web linking document.
Yeah, I think we should. Because right now it's yeah, it's a bit of a mess. They're anywhere, everywhere, and it's even hard to know where to find all of them.
And by the way, sec.gp and app.gp, well, there will be strings, the values they have depending on your particular applications and setting, of course, while for the other ones, we are not going to register any value for them. Values are going to be taken by the proper COSI registries and so on. It's just about the parameters themselves.
Right.
This link format was like the rock-solid solution that we are convinced of is the right and best way to move forward for the foreseeable future. Then I would be all in for creating this registry. At least I'm trying to convince myself of, I'm not convinced yet, but I'm trying to convince myself that link format is nearing its end of life. And therefore, I have some reservation on spending too much time on blowing more life into link format. But I have no conclusions on this yet, where my position actually is.
But I mean, what would be the best way to the fastest and least painful way to do that? And possibly asking Carsten, principally, if we wanted to register these things.
Well, we would have to create a registry.
In a separate draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question.
would probably be weird to have it in this draft.
Would it have to be like core adopted or AD sponsored or what?
It would be specifically for core, and it probably should be a working group document. And I'm trying to find the space in 8288 that actually allows us to do this. Because that might. 8288 says this specification does not attempt to coordinate the name of target attributes. Those creating and maintaining serializations should coordinate their target attributes and may define their own registries of target attributes.
Yep, I think this registry is fully technically feasible with that wording. It's mostly about how do we do this. If, for example, your draft wants to register a bunch of new attributes, would you wait for a second draft that defines the registry if that progresses more slowly? Or
why would it progress more slowly? I mean, it's just, yeah.
I can wait.
It's just an IANA,
it's
IANA
possible
register.
that,
I mean,
we don't know if there are anyone out there who has their own link target attributes. And if we create a registry, maybe they register their attributes at some point, but likely not immediately. What we know of is all the attributes in RFCs and current drafts. So we can always keep a list in some wiki somewhere where we keep track of what we personally know of. And then anytime create that registry when we feel that the wiki is not good enough. So that would decouple the
I mean, that's what IANA is for, though. Like, that's what IANA registries are, not to have these wikis. So
I guess we could
we
create
have the
also a
wiki
draft.
now already because Hanna started it.
We could also create a new draft and move that through core as fast as possible. I guess it would be like introduction immediately followed by IANA consideration.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you just put in the definition of the registry and the list of existing items and their references. And we could have a working group last for next week. But it's still some processing time that is required with ISG review and all of that.
Yeah,
and again, it's a dying
I'm fine with that.
hopefully.
Yeah, but none of what we are discussing now will be faster than creating this registry.
Yeah, you mean like the group of core resource discovery
I mean,
document?
it cannot go faster than this document anyway. It would be absurd.
Cannot go faster.
The document for the IANA registry for the target attribute.
Yeah, that could go faster.
Sorry, I meant the opposite.
Okay.
Right.
I hope it would.
Yeah.
Well,
No, come on. No, it cannot.
I also have the plan to reorganize or refresh the definitions of all the existing core registries that we have, the core parameters registry. That is not something that can be done within 1 week. It requires a bit more thinking, how we want to set up the registries, put more guidelines for designated experts. That's the main reason. Currently, we have too few guidelines for designated experts. And so to avoid a flood of registry creating, updating drafts, we could also say that this new registry here
can be part of that.
Is part of that effort. But that would be moving more slowly than in standalone draft.
I think it's still very fine. Even so. I really think so.
So
I'm waiting for a reaction from Karsten, but maybe he's thinking or discussed it. You never know.
Well, all the direction I can give here is it's really easy to define this target attribute registry, and I'm all for moving small documents unless we are doing something that actually does require coordination, and I'm not sure that that would be actually the case here. We do have to define the registry policy. And that would take a little bit of discussion, but I don't think that's going to be very complicated.
I mean, considering that now there is no registry at all, even having a pretty relaxed policy for registering attributes will be fine, I guess.
We're going from not being able to register anything to free for all is a pretty big step.
Well, what I mean is it's already free for all. It's just like we don't have a place to track it. Now we would just have a place to track it.
And isn't this already free for all in the sense that 8288 says that everybody can pick any name they want?
That's what I meant.
Okay,
it's like, it's already free for all. So it would be a more structured free for all. Or there would be even, Anyway.
You can always put a designated expert and then find out the rules for the designated expert later on the fly on each case.
Okay, can be done then, in principle.
Yeah. So who takes this? Gonna happen?
I would be slightly in favor of doing this as part of the core parameters draft. There is no dependency between these registries, but I think it would make processing things easier, even if it's slower. So if that is an agreeable way of doing it, I would move this forward.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Then I had the next point, which is the next bullet point. I remember at the core meeting in Montreal, Jim proposed the possibility to have this document actually moved to the ACE working group, because all in all, it's about advertising and discovering information that are useful in ACE, in fact. And I agree. And I remember Carsten be positive on this, though we started in core because this is about the resource directory that has core as its home. I'm fine with that. This has to happen. I wanted to check again because, of course, we are working on an update of this draft. If that's something we can confirm now or soon, we can submit that update to ACE right away. Otherwise, we continue in core.
Yeah, I think that I think this will be done. I'm not yet entirely sure how much this is about resource directory and group manager as opposed to authorization server.
It has nothing to do with authorization server. This is only about finding out what group manager and what resource at the group manager to talk to. So it's very much
the train of thought is you want to find an OSCORE group and its group manager, meaning you want to find the link to the joint resource at the group manager. So you need to find links and descriptions, and it happens there's a way to do that efficiently in core, and it's the resource directory. So let's go for it. But it has nothing to do with any authentication or authorization process. That has to happen, of course, later on in ACE, in fact.
I'm also wondering at this point, it may make more sense to stay in core because this may also be where you end up putting information about how to publish into a resource directory the information you need for the multicast observe.
Yeah.
Okay. You mean adding the multicast IP address using the group as a target attribute of the link to the join resource?
Potentially.
Okay, we thought about that at the very beginning. We discarded that option, which resulted in that second query we showed before, because we wanted to have the OSCORE group manager in principle agnostic of the multicast IP address used in the group, because he should care about key material all in all. And also because those multicast IP addresses are in fact associated with application groups that have their own different ways of being registered in the resource directory.
Right, but I'm thinking that you're going to the resource which is broadcasting on returning the observe on the multicast may want to advertise both its resource group and its token.
Okay, wouldn't that be done then in the application group registration of the resource directory again?
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah, sounds more natural.
I haven't thought about it much.
Okay. But should we keep this in core then, for the time being?
I think so.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
And no matter what, I would keep the draft in core. I would not rename it to ACE. And then once it gets a working group document in core or in ACE, that working group document would replace the draft in core.
Okay. So adoption should happen in core
we can
anyway.
move the discussion where we think it's best. Right now it seems core is best. If we think while discussing that ACE is a better place, we just switch mailing lists without renaming the draft.
By the way, a few meetings ago was raised by the chairs that before formally raising adoption call, they should go to reviews, and there were a few promised reviewers. So yeah, we're waiting for those reviews. Otherwise, this is pretty advanced and close to be considered for adoption actually.
So we have 4 minutes, and the last point we did not discuss at all during the workshop. How would this work in a coil-based RD? And I don't think we have time to talk about it now.
It's something that we should definitely do, in my opinion. Find out how it should be done. If we want then to standardize this approach or not is a secondary question. I'm not 100% sure, but 100% means a little bit. But we should definitely do the exercise on finding out how it looks like if you use Coral and Coral Reef, for example.
Yeah, which leads us to the last point of the agenda, which is what are we going to do 2 weeks from now? And the one word that is at the top of the agenda is Coral. So maybe we can add Coral RD plus group communication as a subpoint here.
The objective for Coral would be to close some of the GitHub issues before Singapore. Unfortunately, most of those are not in a state where it's just picking one of proposed solutions and then being done. It's more coming up with those candidates in the first place. Maybe it's a good idea to also have some design team meetings before and after the interim, and then use the interim to present candidate solutions to a larger audience. Hey, Christian, are you available?
Christian is not here anymore.
Oh. I take that as a yes from Jim.
My availability is going to be highly unknown. It will depend on what's happening on any given day.
I would try to send a doodle poll and find some dates.
Yeah, my problem is I know what I'm doing tomorrow, today.
Hey Jim, what are you doing later today?
I am running 4 tons of fruit as soon as I get to the winery.
Ah.
So, Carsten, I just uploaded the slides or proposed slides for today's. We just have to accept them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, any other business?
We can't serve the interim in 4 weeks from now, right?
Have we actually said that? My
Yes.
notes are ambiguous on this.
I will be in the air.
Yeah, I will already have landed, but we will probably be sleeping. So one interesting thing about Tuesday and Wednesday, Wednesday and Thursday, 13th and 14th, W3C is not going to meet in Singapore. We're going to have our workshop on the 15th, but we are not going to have a W3C Web of Things meeting on the 13th and the 14th. People generally have had budget problems adding another meeting that late in the year. So that is not going to happen. So that's great because those of us arriving early are going to have more time doing things like these. So maybe we can have a physical meeting on the 14th.
Have you gone to get a room for the 15th yet?
I think Intel is still up for sponsoring that. I'm going to have a discussion tomorrow to clarify this. So we are still looking at meeting in USS. Okay. So yeah, it seems it doesn't make a lot of sense to have the actual interim meeting on the 13th. So do we decide to cancel this?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you all.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.